My name is Rev Shakeel Nurmahi here from this church, and I will be your chair for this evening. Polling day is very nearly here. It's next Thursday, and the nation will be coming out in their millions to cast their vote for who should represent them in Parliament. Some of you have already decided and know who you're going to be voting for, but there are many who are still uncertain about for whom to cast your vote. Well, my hope is that tonight's hustings will help you answer that question. We're here in our newly formed Rutland and Stamford constituency, and it's my pleasure to be joined by our parliamentary candidates sitting next to me, who are here hoping that you will give them your vote.
A bit louder.
A bit louder. Rob, can you give us a little bit louder?
It's going to be interesting.
It's
only up to 11.
We'll try and project as best as we can, but Rob, thank you for managing that. I'm delighted to be joined with Emma Baker from the Green Party, Christopher Clowes, the Reform UK Party, Alicia Kearns from the Conservative Party, James Moore from the Lib Dem Party, and Joe Wood from the Labour Party. These 5 candidates, alongside Joanna Burrows from the Rejoin EU Party, are hoping that next Thursday you will come out in support for them. Now, tonight is your chance to hear from your parliamentary candidates. I'm going to ask some questions that have been sent in ahead of tonight. We will give lots of time for all of your questions from the floor. As you can imagine, there are more questions than we have time for, so I do apologise if we're unable to get to your question. We will try and get through as many questions as we can. We will be finished by 7:45, so you'll be able to get home in time for the 8 o'clock kickoff of the England match. Before we begin, can I just give a few housekeeping notices? There is no fire drill planned for tonight, so if the fire alarm goes off, it is a real fire, so can you please make your sensible exit to the fire exits at the door over there, at the back, and on the left and right hand sides of the church. We have members of the local press who are here going to be recording part of the Hustings debate tonight. I've asked them only to be filming directly towards the candidates at the front, so you won't know anyone will be on camera, but if you ask a question, your voice will still be captured in the audio recording. If you need to go to the toilet at any point, the toilet is just at the back in the room on your left when you came in, or on your right if you're facing this way into the church. So I'll just briefly explain the format of tonight. Each candidate will give an opening statement of no more than 90 seconds, and we'll go in alphabetical order from Emma through to Joe. And then we're going to present 3 questions that have been sent in advance to kick off our hustings. And each candidate will have no more than 2 minutes to respond. And after these 3 opening questions, which have been sent in advance, we're going to turn to the floor. We're going to turn to you to hear your questions. Liz will be coming round with the mic. Liz, can you just wave your hand? Liz is over there. Fantastic. So when it comes to that time, please just raise your hands and we'll nominate some of you to come and ask your questions. We'll take 3 questions at a time just to help keep the speed of the night going. Now, in order to keep the hustings moving and to hear as many questions as we can I please ask that if you're chosen to ask a question, please state your name and directly ask your question. Please do not give a long backstory to your question. We only have a limited time together and we want to get the most out of this time because it's really important to have these discussions. Now, as much as it's right to ask the tough questions and to interrogate your parliamentary candidates, can I please ask that we try and engage in a respectful and pleasant manner? Please don't talk over one another and let's listen and engage attentively, and that way we can get the most out of these hustings. Otherwise it's going to ruin the night for all of us, and we don't want that. We want to enjoy tonight and have a good time. Well, that's enough from me. Without further ado, would you please give a warm round of applause of appreciation for our candidates? We're going to come to Emma Baker to give her opening statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Emma Baker and I am your Green Party candidate for Rutland and Stamford. and I want to do politics differently. I think we can all say that politics currently is on its feet and it needs change. I want to listen to my constituents and I want to respond to my constituents. The Green Party is great because we are not controlled by a whip, which means that in Parliament I can speak for you and put you first, always. That is me, and I really hope that you will vote for change on the 4th of July. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anna. Come to Chris Clowes. Thank you.
Hi there everyone, my name's Chris Clowes. I'm a candidate for Reform and I've grown up very much locally, schooled locally just outside of Leicester, and I decided to run for Reform out of frustrations in the way that the rural areas have been left behind by the Tory government, the rural areas which have voted them in. I know that many people are frustrated at metropolitan issues being the main issues rather than bringing the countryside up to standards. We are here in Oakham where 93% of households have cars, whilst there is a war on motorists going on. Should we not be promoting transport rather than punishing people for owning what is a very expensive piece of equipment to begin with? With that, my focus is on the rural issues, not on the metropolitan issues, and I look forward to the rest of this hustings.
Thank you very much, Chris. We hear from Alicia Kearns.
Evening everyone, I'm standing on my record of standing up for you because I have always put Rutland first. And so what I'm asking for at this election is for you to support me so that I can keep supporting every one of you. There are many people who think that MPs can't make a difference, but I have helped over 40,000 people in our communities who were suffering with appalling injustices or dark times or who had questions or concerns about legislation. I've delivered on every election promise I made to you in 2019, some that people said couldn't be done. Now that doesn't mean case closed, there's nothing more to be done. Whether it was the A1, broadband, healthcare, more money for our councils, I have delivered on them. As an MP, I have never taken going into Parliament for granted, and I've always known the responsibility that sits on my shoulders. Now we might not always agree, and I will make mistakes, but I'm someone who builds consensus and works cross-party. I've balanced delivering on national legislation and scrutinising things to make them work better for Rutland, but I've also focused on keeping our country safe. I'm the first ever and youngest chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee ever, and who voted me in? MPs across Parliament, because I have their respect. MPs from every single party voted for me to be the chair. But most of all, I've held even my own government to account, so that they work better for Rutland. And at all times I've done it while being local, approachable and hard-working. So I'm sitting here not because I enjoy party politics and playing political games, I most certainly do not. I care about campaigns, policy and communities, and I want to keep fighting for us. So if you give me that opportunity, I will keep standing up for you, I will keep supporting for you, and I will fight for us again every single day with Rutland in my heart. Thank you.
We're now going to hear from James Moore.
Hi, I'm James Moore. I'm your Liberal Democrat candidate at this election. And first of all, thank you. Thank you for coming to this hustings rather than watching football. I know some of you might be voted me elsewhere, but thank you anyway. And thank you for the wonderful support that we've had, not just during this election, but also last year and the last couple of years. You might know there's been an incredible Liberal revival in this area in recent years. We've now in a position where we actually run the local council, unthinkable a few years ago. And we've run across the whole area of the constituency, from Houghton, from Thurnby, through Oakham, through Uppingham, through Stamford. We have councillors across the area, and we're in a very strong position now to win, we believe, the parliamentary seat this time. I want to be a strong independent voice. I want to be a voice that doesn't just simply go along with the crowd, go along with what the government tells me. I think we've seen what's happened in recent years, haven't we? We've seen the chaos of the Liz Truss budget, we've seen the chaos associated with Boris's law breaking, We've seen the chaos now of actually the government apparently betting on its own demise, incredibly. I think we need a change. And in this area, voting Liberal Democrat is not only a way to get change, but it's to get someone who's on your side, who's really fighting for you, not simply in the pockets of the whips, not climbing the greasy ladder. You don't join the Liberal Democrats to climb the greasy ladder, do you? Let's face it. You join the Liberal Democrats because you're passionate and committed to your community, and that's what I am, and that's why I hope you'll support me come July the 4th.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Oh, hello. Am I good to go? I'm ready to go. My name is Joe Wood. I'm the Labour candidate, and I'll echo what you said. It's wonderful to see such a great turnout tonight, and thanks to everybody for coming along and giving up your time to listen to us. I was born in South Wales, in a community which is very similar to this one, a rural area. My grandfather owned a farm, sheep and dairy, and I helped out on his farm as I was growing up as a young person. I left school at 16 and I went to agricultural college, and I then started working as a fish farmer. I then had a very fortunate encounter which led to me having the opportunity to go overseas and to work in wildlife conservation. And I then spent the next 10 years working in wildlife conservation before doing a master's degree in climate change and setting up my own small business, which I still run to this day, advising businesses on sustainability matters. My motivation for standing, well, I suppose I feel that there aren't enough people in Parliament who have a science background who understand basic scientific principles, and there certainly aren't enough people who understand the climate and nature emergencies. When I look at Parliament on the television, I just despair. It feels like a branch of the Oxford Debating Society. It's a battle of two narratives, and nowhere in that battle does there seem to be space for the objective real world and the real world problems that we're all facing. And on that level, I'd just like to read out a handful of facts if I can, please. This is from Best for Britain, so not from the Labour Party. Since 2010, we've lost 244 courts and tribunals, 600 police stations have closed, 800 libraries, 25,000 NHS beds. The country is on its knees, but I'm full of hope for the future. Now is the time for us to turn the corner, stand up, brush ourselves off, and give ourselves back the future that we need. Thank you.
So we're going to start with some questions that have been sent in advance just to get our candidates warmed up, and then we're coming to you. So our first question is, how would you ensure that the UK realises the maximum national economical benefits from the transition to net zero? The second question, what are you going to do about the shortage of NHS appointments at GP surgeries and dentists? In question 3, how will the next government demonstrate a commitment to serving people across the country as opposed to the self-interest that has characterised the last 14 years? Who would like to start? Emma, thank you.
Okay, do you want them all answered together or separately?
All 3 together, just to do.
Okay, right. Okay, so, and I've got 2 minutes. Ooh, that's a lot to cover in 2 minutes, isn't it? Okay, I'll give it a go. So, firstly then, net zero. Well, sorry, this has just got to happen. This is essential to the world we're living. And if we invest now, it's going to cost us $40 trillion worldwide. Now that's a big number, okay? But if we do not do anything, then it's going to cost us £1,226 trillion worldwide. That is the economical benefit of doing things now. So other things, energy infrastructure, it's going to give thousands of people new jobs, new employment. And what we can do is learn from the 1980s with the miners' strikes and really work with our workers and with our unions to make that transition to green energy a just transition. Okay, so that's a very quick whistle-stop tour on the first question. Second question, wow, waiting lists in GPs and NHS dentists. Well, I travel 2.5 hours to access my NHS dentist. That's just wrong. Okay, and many, many more people cannot get onto NHS dentists. We need to think about supporting dentists in their training and give them incentives to come and work as dentists. The same for our GPs. Now, in Oakham, oh crikey, in Oakham in 2023 it was rated good, but still so many people cannot get appointments quick enough. We need to streamline administration so that doctors can see us face to face quicker. And can I answer the last question? It was a lot. Yeah. Thank you. So the Green Party actually want to bring in a Fair Politics Act. That's a really fundamental part of our manifesto, and I beg you all to go and read that. We actually want to get rid of the House of Lords and replace it with an elected second chamber. Thank you so much for the extra time. I'll pass on to you.
Joe, we're just going to go next, and in the interest of fairness, every candidate will have 2.5 minutes. Sorry?
That's fine, thank you. Well, on net zero, as I said, I'm perhaps unique amongst parliamentary candidates in that I have a master's degree in climate change, and I've worked in that space for many years. I talked in my introduction about this problem that we have in Parliament of this, treating it like a debating club. Sorry, I meant to disrupt you. I'm dyspraxic. Would you mind I didn't talk over you? Thank you. So we have this problem with it being treated like it's a debating club, when there is out there, no matter how inconvenient it may be, a real physical reality. The truth is that we've been taking carbon out of the ground, putting it into the atmosphere, and that has changed the climate, and those climatic changes are going to cause real problems for us. Labour Party have their GB energy policy, which I think will be really transformative. We need to recognise that China is racing ahead of us in the green tech space. We need to recognise the reality of the need to decarbonise quickly, and we need to seize the opportunities of new technologies to spread wealth to all regions of the country and reindustrialise. Now, on the issue of GP appointments, this is something that I would say is the #1 issue that comes up locally, GPs and dentists. Labour have a number of policies which are going to reform GP appointments to give more face-to-face appointments in the evening at weekends. We're going to reform the booking system so you don't have to all queue on the phone at 8 o'clock in the morning. And in total, we'll deliver 2 million extra appointments across the NHS hospitals and GPs per year. Very quickly, finally, on the issue of cleaning up politics. Well, I think the issue we've seen over the past 14 years is perhaps not a problem with bad people, but with bad ideology, dogmatism, a dogmatic faith in a certain type of free market, I would say quite extremism has taken hold. We need a return to a more balanced economy, a more balanced politics, and a politics that puts honesty, integrity, rather than good newspaper headlines first, and a politics which is motivated by a desire to serve people, to get out there into your community and to help folks. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. James, we're going to come to you next.
Thank you. Well, back in 1989, I wrote a letter to my local paper drawing attention to the issue of climate change. I pointed out the dangers of what was then called global warming and the need to decarbonise the economy. This is not a new issue. Liberals have been talking about this for more than 30 years. And if we'd put the policies in place 30 years ago, we'd be in a far better place now. We could be a world leader But what we've had is successive Labour and Conservative governments talking the talk, but not walking the walk, not delivering. So what we do is have a net zero delivery agency to coordinate the transition to net zero, to decarbonise the economy at all levels. We'd have a national plan to introduce solar panels on home roofs and to introduce heat pumps for anyone who wants them. We'd subsidise that in the case of low income so everyone can afford this new cutting edge technology. That in itself would revolutionise the economy and create lots of jobs from people installing that equipment, but also people producing, delivering that equipment in the UK. We'd also determine, focus on getting a 10-year upgrade programme for renewables. So we'd make sure that the renewables are ready for that 24-45 net zero target, and we'd have a net zero delivery authority to monitor that process. On the NHS, yeah, I agree, in many ways this is the number one issue. The Liberal Democrats are unique in introducing, in their plans, a legal right to see a GP within 7 days for non-urgent cases, and a legal right to see a GP within 24 hours for urgent cases. So you will have a guaranteed doctor and the NHS will have to provide that. You've paid in, you should get the service you deserve. And in order to deliver that programme, we're going to actually employ 8,000 new doctors within the NHS and provide a costed framework for delivering that. So it's not just airy-fairy, it's actually in there, it's a costed programme which we can deliver within the life of the Parliament. On the question of self-interest, I think this is a difficult one. I don't actually believe that most people are fundamentally self-interested in politics. Most people I work with are genuinely decent, but I would reform the voting system. So not only you get a choice between parties, but you get a choice between candidates of individual parties. So you would have in a larger constituency, 5-member constituency, and you'd have 5 people to choose from each party. And that would drive, I think, change and drive a better quality of MPs.
Thank you very much, James.
So on net zero, I'm really proud that we have decarbonised faster than any major economy in the world. And we are the world leaders in offshore wind. No one is doing more in offshore wind than us. And I was one of the 40 MPs who changed the law so that wind can be built onshore again, because we need the right mix of renewables. But we're doing it in a sensible way that brings industry with us, that makes sure we have the time to get the skills that we need and that we can bring the country with us. We've heard that Labour said they're going to move back to the 2030 target. The Net Zero Committee in Parliament, which is crossbench, it's in the Lords, have said don't do that. Actually, we cannot afford to do that. It is not the right way to do it. If you do it, you will have to do it on the back of Chinese technology. That is vulnerable, it is dangerous, it is the wrong thing to do because often it's on the backs of blood labour. We have to do it sensibly. Lib Democrats have put in their manifesto they're going to remove all restrictions on solar on agricultural land. That's what said in this manifesto. They're going to remove all the new legislation that I got back in May. It was me that pushed and forced to make sure we protected most of most versatile land, because food security is a national security issue, and we in Rutland know that more than anyone else. So I want to be pro-net zero. I'm a member of the Conservative Environment Network. We cannot do it in a way that makes us less safe when it comes to a security issue, or makes us vulnerable, or where the industry isn't ready. On the issue of healthcare, there is no easy answer to healthcare. Nobody should be saying to you, well, if we just do these 2 things, there's going to be a solution. There's been a 14% increase in GP appointments in Rutland alone since 2019. So we've got the highest number of GP appointments we've ever had, and yet people are still struggling. So we have to fundamentally rethink our relationship with GPs and how we work with them. But I've been working there from what I can do locally. So my priority has been helping MPing in practice so they can move to a new site. There's a small legislative problem where they couldn't take their dispensing rights with them. So what have I been doing? Working on how to get them that dispensation so they can take their dispensary rights with them, because they are phenomenal practice. Medbourne Medical Clinic, it closed before the pandemic. I worked and worked and worked until we got it reopened. Stamford and Rutland Hospital in Stamford is going to get a new £15 million treatment centre that should open next year. And I secured a new GP practice in Melton because they had 1 practice, not 5 that we have. They had 1 serving the entire community of Melton, which has the same population size as us. So I've tried to work really hard to deliver on this. On dentistry, the biggest privatisation of healthcare ever in this country happened under Labour when they privatised dentistry. I met with all my dentists 2 years ago and they said we can't fix it. We've just brought in a new dentistry programme. As a result, a practice in Oakham is now taking NHS patients again. And just on accountability, I've always been very honest with you, right? I felt my party screwed up. I've been honest when I thought I screwed up. I've written it in Stamford Mercury, so it's there to read. I'll always hold myself accountable to you. Sorry.
I'm going to come to Chris.
When it comes to net zero, I do think that the UK contributes less than 1% of carbon for the globe. But despite this, we still have 30,000 unnecessary deaths each year due to not being able to heat homes, which you would think with the 15 years of renewable energies, we would have overcome by this point. Not only that, we have these huge facilities, but the price has gone up from £2,000 per year in between 2022 to 2023. It went up by £1,500. So this goes into the cost of living as well as that net zero is expensive. It is expecting you to stay at home and do nothing. You all have your lives ahead of you. You want to be out, you want to do things, and particularly from here. And so when it comes to the heating, when it comes to it, I do not think it is fair to punish our own citizens in exchange for international kudos points. My next point will be on the NHS, which with reform we have said we want to start utilising the private facilities along with the not-for-profit facilities that we have within the country. Already 1 in 10 operations are done under the RTT, which is using the private side and is paid for with the NHS. It's already in the process, and with this it is relieving pressure on the NHS, and we need to utilise it more. It is already there. Along with that, the average salary within the NHS of a manager is around £45,000, whilst for a nurse it's £40,000. We need to be able to increase the salaries of the frontline staff in line with the back end, especially of the NHS. There is bloating at the back end. I have friends who are junior doctors who say that they are being micromanaged. They're expected to do far much than what is needed. And you would think if there was more doctors coming in, which would be done, we would do by removing the cap on medical staff being trained each year. I would see that as something that is a necessity for the future of this country, and it goes into the dentistry too. In dentistry, the private side is too competitive. The salaries are much higher than the NHS. The NHS dentists cannot compete salary-wise, and they move to the private side. In terms of accountability, I'm running here in a local constituency, having grown up here my entire life, having been schooled here, having been a part of this world, the countryside here, having been a part of this life. I believe in all of you when it comes to we will have something in common. And I hope that on January the 4th, I can rely on your vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we're looking for some questions from the floor. So if anybody would like to ask a question, please raise your hand and our mic will come around to you. We've got a question over here. 1. Is there any more questions? 2 and 3. So go 1, 2, 3. Please say your name and ask your question directly.
My name is Graham Stark. What would you do to encourage the building of more affordable housing in this constituency?
So a question about affordable housing in this constituency.
Everyone right next.
Was the second one over here, was it? Or was it over there? Was it there?
Mark Ferguson. You've all touched on various shortcomings of the current government as to where the problems are with the NHS and lack of doctors and dentists and everything else. What other issues do you think we're suffering from, and what would you do to make a recovery to get us back on track? Because I think there's one major problem that has lost this current government's confidence in the public, which nobody's mentioned so far.
Thank you. And the other question was over here.
I'm genuinely perplexed, and I'm hoping that the candidates can help me with this. We're being taxed as a nation now more than we've ever been taxed. And why I'm perplexed is because we seem to be paying more and more for less and less. If we think about the state of our roads, if we think about the state of the health service, our local councils. I'm just wondering if you have a reason why we seem to be paying more for less.
Thank you very much. Candidates, are you happy with the questions?
Can I just have the second question?
Liz, can we just come back to the second?
What's the thing the government is fixing?
So asking what's the government needs to be fixed?
My question was that several points have been mentioned by all of the candidates as to lack of doctors, lack of dentists, etc. What other big issues do you think this government has failed the country at to get them into a situation where they had such a massive majority at the last election for the Conservatives to be on their knees now and for you guys to come and sweep up? I think there's other points other than doctors and dentists that nobody's touched on.
Thank you very much. Candidates, are you happy with that?
I don't think we can say no to any of them.
We'll give you 3 minutes each, just so that should hopefully cover your time sufficiently. Would any of you like to volunteer to begin? Otherwise, I will choose you. I'll begin. Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
I went last time. When it comes to affordable housing, there's huge issues within the planning sector when it comes to this, whereby we aren't there's more and more bureaucracy come up every day when it comes to building new homes. We need to cut this out, right? We need to encourage the building on brownfield sites, almost offer tax rebates in exchange for that. Along with that, within our constituency specifically, if you visit the villages, it is all, 2 3-bed houses, there's, 3 or 4 bed houses. If you go to a village, they're never building a block of flats that can fit 4 families in, which would be much more affordable. I know that in Lincolnshire, affordable housing is classified as being worth 270 grand, despite the average salary in Lincolnshire being £32,000. So that still requires you to have a dual income, so 2 of you, to afford an affordable house. And so that is one of the big issues I see as we move forward, is what is meant to be affordable is no longer affordable. And it affects particularly people, I'm 28, I know people younger than me who expect to never be able to buy their own house. And these housing prices that haven't gone up in line with inflation is a huge issue that must be addressed. We need to bring, and this brings into the next point with the taxes, is salaries have not gone up in line with inflation, but all of the government expenditure has. So you are paying more, you are being taxed more, and it is coming back as less and less. Within the government services now, we have a huge issue with inefficiency. Within the NHS, as mentioned, to do with the middle managers, we have civil service bureaucrats. There's over 600 government departments. You have a Department of Social Justice. That doesn't need millions going into it. You have the Natural England Department, which is almost a purely political organisation there to make the countryside suffer. There does not need to be millions in that. So there are cuts to be made within the government so that we can bring taxes down. If it was up to me, I would cut the civil service in half and then increase the salary by 25% to get better people in, to get people who will work, who will get people who aren't just wanting to be working from home. These are all facts when it comes to the government, because people want a government that works for them. And then on the last point here, and the big issue, I think it is Brexit that hasn't been fully addressed. The Tories have walked steps line in line in just different wording when it comes to making laws that affect especially rural areas. When it comes to farming in particular, you can see that they've taken a more extreme attack on farming than what the EU has done. And that is causing small farms to shut. This SFI scheme has not worked out in a way that only large landowners can afford it to start with. You cannot ask a farmer with less than 200 acres to put aside 20% of their land, so a fifth of their income, just like that, just in exchange. And the chances, depending on... Yeah, sorry, anyway.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you. Would you like to go next?
James
and Alicia.
Absolutely. On the affordable homes issue, yeah, I couldn't agree more that building affordable homes is absolutely essential. It's both a financial problem and a technical problem. One of the technical issues is that the legislation and the regulations mean that the definition of affordable home is frankly nonsense. I mean, it's clearly not affordable in many cases. So we changed the formula, so the calculation for the price of an affordable home reflects the real levels of income in a particular community, in particular those at the lower level in that community. We'd also changed the planning regulations, so developers were required to provide more affordable homes when developing large-scale estates, so they can actually ensure there's a balanced development and it appeals to everybody. Because frankly, one of the real problems in many rural areas is the loss of young people. Young people have to move away because they can't get jobs and they can't get homes. We can't carry on like this. We don't want Rutland simply to become a retirement home, do we? We want to be a vibrant community. So reforming the planning rules, particularly around both the calculation of what is affordable and reforming the laws around planning approvals is absolutely essential for that. We're also big fans of public housing. Not everybody wants to live in a public house. I admit you have a public or council house, but the bottom line is that many people need to move around for the jobs, so buying a house isn't always an option. And the lack of affordable rented accommodation is a real problem for the labour market. People can't afford to move to Rutland for short-term jobs. So again, that's why we need public housing as well as actually affordable private housing. On the question of what's the big issue that's not been discussed, well, I've got a whole manifesto full of things that haven't been discussed that I'd like to, but in the 30 seconds I have, I think economic competence is a massive issue. You know, we saw with the Liz Truss budget, essentially costed tax cuts are a disaster. They destabilise the economy. Similarly, uncosted public spending commitments are also a disaster. And I'm afraid I am very much an old-fashioned Gladstonian liberal. You know, you can't simply tax your way to success. There has to be a balance. Yes, we do need public investment in certain core areas, like the NHS. But what worries me is that sometimes all the parties talk as though a bit more regulation, a few more laws, and more taxes will solve all the problems. They won't. We need a more efficient system of government. We need to tackle waste. Even today, if you look at the BBC website, you see £1.5 billion worth of PPE equipment being dumped. That's on top of all the corrupt contracts during the COVID period and the backhanders that were apparently given for some of these contracts. It's an absolute disgrace. So the first thing you have to do is cut waste. Cut waste from the system, make sure that people get value for money, and make sure the Public Accounts Committee, which is supposed to be supervise expenditure, has much stronger power, so we can make sure that your public money and your taxes are spent as efficiently as possible.
Thank you very much, James. We come to Alicia.
On the question of the current tax burden, we are all feeling it, but as a Conservative, I know that nothing is free. 50% of all jobs in what was Rutland and Melton were paid for by furlough. The government stepped in and saved all those people's homes, the roofs over their heads, their families, and made sure they were protected during the pandemic. 50%. That money has to be paid back. The cost of the vaccine, the quickest rollout in the world, that has to be paid back. Energy bills. We stepped in to pay people's energy bills because of the renewed illegal invasion of Ukraine. We took difficult decisions, really difficult decisions. And actually, sir, that goes just like your point about what's gone wrong in politics. We have been asked to make decisions about things. We never envisioned, I didn't imagine asking you or locking you all up in your homes only a few months after I got elected. I didn't imagine having to rebel multiple times to make my government change course on certain things. People didn't really rebel before Brexit. It didn't really happen. I've rebelled, and people are amazed sometimes when they hear how often I've rebelled compared to colleagues who've been there for 20, 30 years. It has undermined a lot of the systems, the way the system works, and the parties haven't adapted yet. They're not used to the fact that they will have what everyone on this stage has said they will be, which is an independent-minded MP who puts you first. I've been that, I've proven it. I thought it was interesting, some of the comments about, I won't just take a job or go for any gravy tray. Well, I am the person who turned down jobs under Boris Johnson because I didn't think he was doing what was right for the country and right for the party. I am that person who chose to scrutinise and be so tough on my own party that people are grabbing me in corridors going, that's Lord Cameron, you can't say to him that he's getting it wrong. Well, if I think he's getting it wrong, I will challenge him because that is the job, and scrutiny is one of the important parts of what backbench MPs do. We've also put in place childcare offers. These are significant and enormous for supporting people into work. And we have put in place record investment in the NHS. 11% of our GDP goes on the NHS. We are putting enormous investments in to support people. That isn't free. And when it comes to it, we have cut national insurance. Corporation tax is still lower than it was under Labour. And in no G7 country can you earn as much as we do in our country before you start paying taxes. So there is more to be done. I want to do it. I'm really quite extremist when it comes to tax, so I have really struggled over the last few years. But I'm not going to sit here and say to you that all that stuff doesn't need paying for. And they were tough decisions at the time, the ramifications are tough, but they were the right things at the right time to protect people. And I'm proud of what we did in the toughest of circumstances, where none of us really knew what we were facing, and the decisions were enormously difficult. That is what governance is. You scrutinise us, you interrogate us absolutely rightly, but you have to make tough decisions, and there are ramifications for decisions you make.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll try and answer all three of the questions rather than just one. On affordable housing, it's interesting the degree of consensus across the bench here. We're all saying the same thing, aren't we? We need to reform planning laws, make it much easier to build on brownfield sites. The formula for judging what constitutes an affordable house is way out of kilter. If you go to the estate agents in Stamford or even here in Oakham, just look how expensive houses are. That feeds into what constitutes an affordable house. Now, if an average house price is £600,000 or £700,000, £300,000 or £400,000 is not affordable to the average person. The other issue that we have that actually hasn't been mentioned is I bought my first house. It was actually a flat in the centre of Birmingham many years ago, and there were 367 developments in that, flats in that development, of which 8 were owned by people that occupied those flats. So we need to give first dibs to local people and make sure that houses are being available to purchase for people that actually live here and not investors based overseas. On terms of other issues aside from the NHS, I've got education, courts, immigration and climate. So education is probably one of the issues that comes up most often on the doorstep aside from the NHS. I'm a trustee of a school which specialises in helping autistic children, so I'm very aware of the issues around getting an EHCP and SEND provision, also issues around Ofsted and the pressure that's put on teachers. We're seeing an exodus out of the profession. That's a very important issue. I mentioned the 244 courts that we've lost, an average 2.5-year wait to get your court case heard now. I've had personal experience of my family of very, very serious crime where the perpetrator got away with it because it was years between the crime and going to court. In terms of taxation, I might sound a little harsh here, but I mean, the degree of wastage, it was absolutely grotesque to see tens of billions of pounds going in brown paper envelope deals for dodgy PPE, billions of equipment burnt that's now not being used. It can't be an accident when you look at the quality and the background of some of the government front bench MPs. They know what they're doing. We see the middle class has been squeezed. Many people's salaries have stagnated for years, and yet the country's billionaires have seen their wealth go up by 300% over the past decade or so. That can't be an accident, I don't believe. So it's about refocusing on giving people the ability to aspire to a better life, looking after the middle classes, and reforming our ideology so we're not just looking after the very richest in society.
Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. Affordable houses. So I was really lucky to actually be able to use a Help to Buy scheme to get onto the property ladder. But how awful is it that as a teacher I had to use Help to Buy to get on the property ladder? It is on average 8.3 times the average annual salary to buy a house in this country. That's obscene. I think that as a Green Party we are dedicated to building 150,000 properties in this country per year. Now that's going to have a huge impact, but we will prioritise houses that are unoccupied, and as the rest of the floor have said, brownfield sites absolutely have to take priority for our building. For me, I actually have to agree with Joe. For me, education is a massive area of concern for me. As a teacher for 14 years, I have seen colleagues leave the profession, and it was actually one of the major drivers for me towards the Green Party. You know, education shouldn't just be about these high-end state tests that we force 16 and 18-year-olds, and even my son, who is 11 and just finishing primary school. It is not about a test, it is about improving people's love of learning. Send requirements, you know, we need to upskill teachers. I need upskilling to cater and for everybody within our community. Tax, that's a big one for the Green Party. So Adrian, our co-leader, said yesterday on the news that if we want Scandinavian levels of public services, we can't do that with a US-style tax system. We, as the Green Party, are going to introduce wealth taxes. Now that means that we will increase tax for those people that have assets over £10 million, not something that is going to affect me. Lucky you if it is you. Okay? It's going to be 1% on those that have assets over 10 million and 2%, thank you, on those that earn over £1 billion. The tiny impact that will have on them will have a massive impact on all of us. Thank you so much.
We're going to take some more questions for the floor. We've got one over there, another one over there, and a third one over there. So we've got 1, 2, and 3.
Thank you. My name's Lucy, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to put your papers down and answer from the heart for this question. One of you will win the seat next week and be catapulted into Westminster. What are your personal values built on, and how will they affect how you comport yourself as our MP?
Thank you very much. Over there, number 2.
Good evening, Christopher Clark. This kind of first 100 days question, really. If you were elected next week, what would you want to have achieved for the people of Rutland and Stamford in your first 100 days?
Thank you very much. And our third question was over there.
Hi there guys, my name's Charlie. For decades now, water companies have failed to invest in repairing leaking pipes, flood defences, new reservoirs and keeping sewage out of our water courses. Yet they've managed to pay dividends to shareholders and big bonuses to executives. Should it be consumers who now have to pay for the clean-up?
Sorry, can I just... Is that Joe's brother, you said?
You're related to Joe and you're reading a pre-prepared question.
He's not related to me.
But you are, he's here with you.
He's not here with me, I'm right away.
Because you're...
That's not my wife. No, she's saying we're related and that Sally is my wife. Sally's not my wife. Charlie's not related to me. We didn't arrive together. And I think many people here will be concerned about the state of our water courses.
Okay.
With respect to the public.
Okay. Are we happy with what that question was?
Sewage.
Sewage, about sewage. Okay. We'll do 3 minutes from our candidates, and then after that we will have our closing statements. Would any of you like to volunteer to go first? Emma, you?
Yeah. Okay, so I'll put my paper down, Lucy. From the heart. Wow, what are my values? So, being myself, being honest. You know, I am really nervous being up here today, and I'm sure you can all tell. but yeah, just listening to people and responding to you and being the person that you need me to be. I think that's kind of been the really special thing, that when I was accidentally elected as a district councillor in May last year, it's just how privileged a position I am in right now. And yeah, so just listening to people and being honest. And I think that kind of goes to Christopher's question actually about what I would do in my first 100 days, and that is get to know you guys. You know, I don't live in Rutland. I work in Stamford as a teacher. So I got a lot of learning to do if you put me in this amazingly privileged position. So, you know, without listening to you guys, how can I possibly know what you want me to do in Parliament? And sorry, finally to Charlie. I mean, what an absolute disaster our waters are. So my dad is an athletics coach and does triathlons. And triathlons up and down this country have been cancelled because the state of our waters is making athletes so ill. And I'm just appalled that that has been allowed to happen again and again in this country. And the Green Party are really, really about bringing private sectors back into public ownership. And I think that bringing water back into public ownership and allowing us to clean up our rivers and our streams is absolutely of major importance. So maybe that is one of my first 100 days as well. So thank you very much for the questions, I appreciate it.
Volunteers for next. Alicia, you're next.
So in 2010, when the Conservative government came to power, only 6% of waters in our country were monitored. Only 6%. And we felt it was so important that we have taken it to 100% as a result of enormous investment, making sure that we do know what's happened with our waters. And actually, the triathlon on Sunday did go ahead, and I was very proud because my husband came 5th in the Rutland Triathlon on the Sunday, despite being, we had to get there at 5 AM, which was slightly less fun. And actually, we've just been given a blue flag because our waters are so excellent here in Rutland. But essentially, this is something we need to do more on. It's something we have worked really hard to do. But again, there are no easy answers. We've had amendments laid by opposition parties that if we'd voted for them, and goodness knows they went out in the news and said how awful we were for voting against them, they would have required us overnight to rip out our entire Victorian sewage system, and we would have seen sewage in the streets. That's not my assessment, that was the assessment of independent bodies, and we had to vote against that. And then do you know what the headlines were? Evil Alicia Kearns, she wants all sorts of rubbish in our waters. I don't, but my job is not to vote for things that sound lovely, but are incredibly dangerous and cost a high amount. On the point about 100 days, before the election was called, National Highways had promised me they were going to come here and drive all the slip roads on the A1 with me, because I'd managed to get a review of the central reservation crossings on the A1, which follows the 5 safety upgrades that I got last year. I want National Highways here doing that drive with me. The second thing, I want to get on with my dementia campaign. That remains our #1 health condition in Rutland, is dementia. I had amazing people like Angela Rippon coming to help us drive up our diagnosis rates here in dementia, for dementia. I want to get on with that. A flood resilience programme, that's the other thing that I really want to get on with, and you will see me make progress on that. I've been out to visit villages, I've seen what the flooding is like, I've worked with you. Because of me, for the first time in history, Rutland has been able to access the flood recovery grant, because in the past we were excluded because we were too small of a county. I got that law change, we are now getting flooding support we deserve. And the final 2 things I would do is get back to helping the people of Rutland that I'm not allowed to help because the election's been called. People who are emailing saying, my landlord, the boiler broke, he's not helping, you know, things like that. I can't help them right now because we're in Purden. It's one of the things that I love doing. And I also suspect I'll spend a lot of my time fighting Labour's plans to put VAT on private schools, given that we have 10 here, 2,000 people employed by those schools, and over 1,000 SEN kids in those independent schools, let alone the military families in our community who rely on those schools. The final question was about your values. I hope by now you have an idea of who I am, and like, I've always been, I mean, look, on my posters, and I'm sorry, I know they're everywhere, I'm really sorry. I'm that person that, yes, I film a lot of videos, but it's one take unless I swear or get someone sent off, because I don't like it. But I've put on them local, approachable and hard-working, because that's what I think I've been. And you won't agree with me on everything. My husband definitely doesn't agree with me on everything. My 3 and 5-year-old absolutely don't agree with me on everything. But I've worked for my heart. That's all you can ask of me, really. I've worked for my heart, and the moment I stop caring and taking everything to heart is the moment I will not ask you to re-elect me. But for now, I want to fight for you.
Thank you very much. We'll come to James next.
On the question of helping people, you don't actually have to be an MP to help people. I'm helping dozens of people across the constituency on all sorts of campaign issues. So that's a slightly odd comment, I thought. But on the point about water privatisation, look, I remember 30 years ago, the Conservatives came to us and said, privatise the water companies. We can't afford to upgrade our water system. We'll hand it over to private companies and they'll provide all the money. It's all come from that. And what have we seen? We've seen 30 years of privatised water companies running the system down, people taking out huge amounts of profits themselves and not doing the repairs. And that's why we're demanding that we have a new independent regulator to force the water companies to bring things up to scratch, to stop dumping raw sewage in our rivers. I mean, 11,000 hours in Rutland of sewage being dropped into our rivers and waterways. I mean, what sort of civilised country drops raw sewage in its rivers in such a beautiful county as this? How have we allowed it to get this bad? Now, 30 years of privatisation, all the promises that they'd resolve the problem, they haven't. So we've got to do something about it, and we've got to get the regulator in, and we've got to make the private water companies pay. On the issue of personal values, look, I think it is very difficult. I actually think that most people come into politics with genuine reasons. I don't think most people are corrupt. I think sometimes the system corrupts people, and I think sometimes the system attracts bad people. But I think in the whole, those people get rooted out when the people, frankly, like Boris Johnson, get found out ultimately. But at a personal level, my personal values are liberalism and Christianity. As a liberal, I believe that no man is so good that he should rule the life of his neighbour. And I also believe that one should be open, honest with all of our constituents. I believe I should listen to them and take their views seriously, even if I don't always agree with them. And as a Christian, I fundamentally believe that not only am I serving the community, but I am also serving God in what I do. And that in serving God, I should approach the conduct of my personal public life informed by those Christian values. Doesn't mean I'm perfect. The last man who was perfect died 2,000 years ago. But it does mean that I believe I have a system of values and beliefs that guides me in my life, which helps me to serve the public and to do a decent job.
Thank you very much, James. We're going to come to Joe and then Chris.
Well, I'll respect your request and leave the pad on the floor for the first one. In terms of my values, I mean, we agree on policy a lot, but for me, I see myself more as a sort of somebody who believes in community, somebody who believes that we achieve more when we act in concert together, somebody who believes it's really important to look out for one another, support one another, but also that in terms of our ability to affect change in society, us as just sort of ordinary people, we can only really affect that change when we act together in concert. I mean, everybody will say that they believe in honesty, and I believe them that they're being honest when they say that. But honesty requires an active process. You've got to look critically at yourself and your actions, and also at the actions of the organisations that you represent, and ask yourself, are they acting in the best of faith? Are they doing the best for our community and our country? I think people can probably guess an implied undertone to that question. Forgive me, I'm going to go back to the pad now if I can find it, because I've got a terrible memory to remember people's 3 questions. But on the issue of water, This is something which is personal to me because 18 months ago I spent about 3 months in and out of hospital. I picked up a very severe infection that nearly cost me my life actually. Just from paddling in the sea with my son, dirty water got into a small scratch. I had an infection of the lymphatic system and the soft tissue in my leg, and it was very resistant to antibiotics, so I was quite ill for some time. It's just a personal anecdote about the end results of excessive liberalisation of our water systems. It's been a disaster, privatising water companies. Vast profits have been realised, but there hasn't been the investment in flooding, there hasn't been the investment in infrastructure, and at the end of the day I think it doesn't suit a privatised model because us as consumers, we cannot choose to not consume water, we need it. Finally, the first 100 days, well, it feels like a slight cop-out answer, but I would have to agree with you. It's about finding your feet, getting out and talking to people. I've not been an MP before, so that's going to take some time. There's a pet project that I care passionately about that won't be achievable in 100 days, but I want to work on, and that's about the establishment of a national cancer task force. Most countries have that, we don't, and I think it's really important that we have a specific cancer task force. So that's something in the first 5 years, not 100 days, I would like to work on establishing. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I'll come now to Chris.
I'm actually going to do the questions in reverse, slightly. When it comes to the sewage issue, it comes to looking at more in depth into what is causing it, which is multiple factors that haven't been addressed. For me, I'm well aware that in the Lincolnshire area, that the farmers who have natural fertilisers that are only allowed to be spread at certain times of the year are leaking, because they have kept the EU regulations that you can only spread slurry and manure during certain weeks in October. That has not been deregulated, and it leads to it when it rains, and particularly with the bad summer we've had so far, it leaks in. And so we need to loosen those regulations. We do have a shortage of artificial fertiliser too. We should be encouraging the use of natural fertilisers. When it comes next to the sewage, it is then holding people accountable. I think there, as mentioned earlier, the justice system becoming far slower, people are not being held to account, people no longer want to deal with it, because even dealing with a bureaucrat is a bureaucratic process in itself. And so there is very little responsibility being taken for further issues. And that would be part of my first 100 days, would be getting in regulation to protect our waterways. Along with that in Rutland, I do feel quite strongly about having regular transport between the towns and connecting into Leicester, Grantham, Bourne, and maybe Corby and Kettering. That should be something that should be going on 20-25 minutes tops. You should be able to get there, where you go. Fantastic. That would be the best starting, but along with that then, as we prepare for the winter, it'd be making sure we get the fuel prices down. We get energy being generated, we get people safe in the winter, and that will also include people being able to afford it, which would require cutting the taxes on small businesses, because it comes down to saving them. When it comes to my principles, my moral prerogative, I've grown up locally, I'm here to represent locally, but I do have a great belief that this country can really do well for everyone. It has come this far. It is more united than most, and I want to carry that forward for everyone. One of my big things that I do on the regularly is volunteering with the disabled. I was disabled students officer at university because I felt strongly about representing those people to make sure that new buildings were able to facilitate that. I go to Lourdes on a pilgrimage, so Christianity coming up again, judge me, and I am very much here to make sure that everyone gets an even playing field, but that is by hard work. And by hard work, I mean everyone has the opportunity to go and work. A close friend of mine passed recently, he was missing all of his limbs. He still had a fantastic job. He was able to have a great family, a great local community relationship around him.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Gary.
Thank Thank you. We're going to come to our closing statements from our candidates, and they each have 2 minutes. And we're going to start with Joe and work our way around down the line. Joe, when you're ready.
I don't have any animosity whatsoever towards Conservative members or towards Conservative voters. I'm not somebody that would say, I don't like Tories. My beloved grandmother was a lifelong Conservative member, and so this isn't about a personal attack. It's about a cold, hard analysis of how the past 14 years have gone. And it's been, no matter where you look, disastrous. I do not accept a rosy picture that's been painted. From cancer treatment, to dentistry, to roads, to transport, nothing seems to be working well, no matter where you look. And I blame it, as I've said many times, if you'll forgive me for repeating myself, not on bad people, but on bad ideas, bad policies, bad economics, bad ideology. It's time to turn a corner. Now, I find myself sitting here listening to my friends from the Green Party, to a great extent from the Liberal Democrats, and from other parties as well, and I agree with them. I feel like we could almost be in the same party. I don't like first past the post. I think it's deeply undemocratic. It's desperately important to reform this terrible voting system that we have. But until we make that reform, we're stuck with it. And the harsh reality is that Labour are in second place here, quite far ahead of the other smaller parties. I'm making a personal plea to you. If you want to see a change in this constituency, for one election and one election only, please lend your vote to me, the second place candidate here. Results based on local election results don't map well to a general election. Check for yourself if you want to. Have a look at tactical.vote or Best for Britain. Please let's vote tactically for the change candidate and have that change in our constituency and our country that we so desperately need. Thank you.
What would you say? I think that, of course, Labour want to persuade you to support their candidate, but the reality is, in real elections that take place in this area, the Liberal Democrats are clearly the main challengers. We run 2 of the major local authorities in this area, Harborough and Rutland. We're in the coalition in the 3rd, and we have, across the constituency, we have 17 councillors. The Conservatives have 15, Labour have just 2. There's absolutely no chance of Labour in this area, and even their national party have said this is a non-battleground seat. They've admitted they can't win.
No, we haven't.
That's on their official documentation that's been published. The only way you can get a change in this area is to vote Liberal Democrat. Labour are terrified that they might be facing a Liberal Democrat official opposition. They know they can beat the Conservatives. The Conservatives have collapsed. But I am in an incredibly privileged position of being the first Liberal in over 100 years to be able to stand in this constituency and say, vote for me, and we have a real chance of winning this time. And not just winning in this constituency, but we have a real chance of being the official opposition in the next Parliament. And that means a fundamental change to politics. Not just a new government, I think Labour will actually offer much of the same if they do win, but a really powerful opposition that can raise questions about why are we in such a state of decline? Why have we spent so many of the last decades with a sense of economic and political decline, and economic and political decay? What we need is a strong Liberal Party in Parliament that can speak for common sense and can introduce a new type of politics. And I want to be part of that as your new MP.
Thank you very much.
Firstly, thank you for coming, and thank you, Shakeel, for your time this evening. My pitch isn't why not them, it's why me. And it's because I have put Rutland first. And when people hear the word Rutland in Parliament, they know it's someone who is passionate, who won't take no for an answer, who is respected across the parties, and who works incredibly hard. I have always put everything on the line for my job. It's a problem, I'm a workaholic, I accept that. But that is how you get things done. And if you put your trust in me again, you will see that there is only one of us who knows how to make government work harder for you. Because yes, I used to be a civil servant, so I know how politics works. Not so much, but definitely government, I know how that works. So I would say put your trust in me, but also in these dangerous times, When the world is really dangerous, I have fought for our country to protect us. Every single day, holding my government to account. In Ukraine, creating the Homes for Ukraine programme, bringing 400 Ukrainian families to the UK, the only politician in the world who said that we were going to see the Gaza crisis in 2023 last January and begged for us to do something. I will help keep us safe here in Rutland. I will help keep our country safe, but I will always put you first, and I will care and I will fight for you. And I hope that even if you hate my politics, you believe that I fight for you and I work hard and that I've done you proud in some way. I want to keep making you proud. So my ask is not why not them. My ask is choose someone who doesn't put dogma or ideology, but who puts love of community and country first. And that is what I will always do for us. Thank you ever so much.
I do really... I do really believe in the future of this country. To be able to get affordable housing, to get prices down, to be able to get the standard of living back to the way it was 10 years ago. We have hit a peak, we can hit a new one, but it requires economic reform, it requires less immigration, less pressure on our systems. If we are to have more immigration, let us sort out the basics first. If we cannot get the basics right, then how are we meant to look after anyone? And that is the future we need. Basics within our border. We want low taxes. We want small businesses. We want entrepreneurs coming up. We want the future to be made British. We want people to want to be here because we are successful, not to come for the welfare state. And for me, in particular, in the rural areas, my view that the Tories have taken the countryside for granted for too long. Reform is the party of the countryside now. We want to represent those who live in small towns, who live in villages, who live out in the sticks, who have been forgotten about. Because you are part of our future too, and an integral part. If we have transport, if we have cars, we can all go and do as we will, but we need to get prices down. We need the standard of living to start increasing again. We cannot let it be stagnant for the next generation. They will have no motivation. They will have no urge to work. And that is a great issue. People need to have a goal. And reform, we will give not just you the goal, but our country the goals it needs. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chris. We come to Emma.
Fabulous. Wow, well, I said right at the beginning that I want to do politics differently. And what a privilege it's been to sit up here today and have the support of you guys, and actually to be the first Green candidate in Rutland and Stamford, and actually for the first time see the Green Party as an option for people up and down this country, and that is a huge privilege, and I'm so honoured to be here. You know, the Green Party do want to do things differently. We want to be about people and planet. So I'm not going to take my full 2 minutes. I'm just going to say thank you very much for listening to me and taking time out of your evening today. And I hope those that are going to go watch the football have a great evening. Thank you.
Well, thank you to all of our candidates for joining us here tonight at our Oakham Hustings. Can we please give all of them a round of applause together?